Not only do we have an update on a video I did a few months ago regarding the white supremacist cop who was exposed in Boise, but we've got some interesting details about the police department overall following a months-long investigation. My name is Brittany Page, and this is The Page Perspective. Thank you so much for joining me. I started a Substack, which you can subscribe to in the link below for free. Remember, subscribing here on YouTube is also free, and it helps me a lot. We're so close to 20,000 subscribers. I appreciate the ongoing support and important conversations that everyone is having in the comments. It's really great to see. Connect with me on social media at Brittany E. Page on all the relevant ones. And listen, a lot of you requested an update to this story, and we finally have one. On November 23rd last year, I did a video about retired Boise Police Captain Matthew Brygelson. He was exposed as a white supremacist when reporter Molly Conger uncovered Bryngelson work with a prominent white power organization called American Renaissance. He was writing vile racist blogs under the pseudonym Daniel Vineyard, a character from American History X, and he was even making appearances speaking at their conferences while working as a cop in Boise. He was getting cozy with mustachioed racist Jared Taylor on camera, talking about how black people commit the worst crimes, that they are the most dangerous people, and, all the same racist tropes that we would expect from white supremacists, all while active on the job before his retirement. I'm not going to rehash all of his vile racism on the job, but you're free to check out that video from a few months ago in the description below. I also talk about my personal history being raised in the white power movement in that video. It was a big one. But now we get to learn about the impact of having a white supremacist cop working for the Boise Police Department for 20 years. So when Matthew Brygelson was exposed as a white supremacist cop, Boise Mayor Lauren McLean announced that a private national firm based out of here, Washington, D.C., called Steptoe and Johnson would be leading an investigation into whether Bryngelson racism had, quote, infected the department. Former Department of Justice Inspector General Michael R. Bromwich led the investigation and recently presented his results to the Boise City Council. Several notable things came out of these results, both related to Bryngelson directly, but also to the Boise Police Department at large. First, I want to talk about how this investigation has been framed in the media. Look at this headline, quote, "Investigation into BPD finds no widespread racism, but turned up issues with training and promotions." I know this is not going to surprise you, friends, but this is not the full story. Boise budgeted $500,000 to the firm for the investigation into the impact of racism on the department, but the firm ran out of money before they could complete their investigation. And I'm reading now from the article, quote, "While the firm ran out of its initial budget of $500,000 and investigators were unable to review the more than 100,000 documents it obtained from BPD or body cam footage, Bromwich said the lengthy interviews conducted with current and former police chiefs, command staff, current and former minority officers, and other stakeholders point to the conclusion that Bryngelson racism was not endemic to the department. The city authorized an additional contract amount with an amount of up to $150,000 for Bromwich to wrap up the work and make the presentation to the council." So again, the headline is the investigation finds no widespread racism, but when you take a closer look, they ran out of money, they failed to review over 100,000 documents and body cam footage, and actually have requested additional funds to wrap up the work they didn't complete. A little preliminary to state the findings that there is no widespread racism, maybe, especially when, according to reporting from the Idaho press, the lead investigator said the investigation's findings were without a high level of confidence because they didn't complete the review of documents and footage. The lead investigator also said they weren't able to talk much to white officers or community groups, view Bryngelson body camera footage, or speak to relevant witnesses. Guys, this is unraveling rather quickly, is it not? And things just get more concerning. Looking again at that reporting from Idaho Press, one senior member of the department at that time who was involved with considering Mr. Bryngelson for promotion was strongly opposed to him and said if this goes through and he becomes a supervisor, we will be reading about this in the newspaper someday. Quite the prognostication. This evidently because Bryngelson was not popular or respected. The lead investigator said he was encouraged to seek promotion and became a supervisor, all while not being respected by his coworkers, having numerous complaints filed against him, including 11 that had been sustained, apparent difficulty in working with the public, with his coworkers, describing him as rude, lazy. He was known to have substance use issues, including alcohol, and was even involuntarily held during a mental health crisis in 2021. And, quote, had a very difficult time keeping his personal bias or dislike of officers from influencing his decisions. And, quote, was part of an internal club where members took care of each other. I want you to remember that line. An internal club where members took care of each other. Because another claim made by this lead investigator is that people were quote unquote surprised to learn of Bryngelsen's racism. I would argue that his fellow Boise cops were surprised in part because of that internal club that you just heard about. Maybe they're willing to discuss some of Bryngelsen's personal faults and not others, not the more serious ones like racism. Can we also just note that he has every quality of a person that you do not want carrying a loaded firearm, patrolling the streets with endless power from the government to arrest and remove personal freedoms from citizens? Every quality of a person you do not want to have power over other people. How many other cops are still in the department who are sympathetic to this man, who behave exactly like this man or have similar records as this man? How many cops across the country are in that same position? Let's get to the worst part of this. The investigation also went into whether Boise officers experienced racism. Many said they had not experienced racism or discrimination in the department, but had experienced racism, including the N-word from residents. The publicity given to Bryngelson's comments did raise suspicion among many, especially minority members, that there were other people like Bryngelson lurking inside BPD, the lead investigator said. A small but significant number say they have experienced racism, and they provided details of what they experienced. By small, he said he meant half a dozen or so, but enough to be of a concern. He said there was a concern and a couple of complaints that they were not taken seriously. Why isn't this the headline? Incomplete investigation into white supremacist cop in Boise Police Department finds cops experienced racism in department, had complaints dismissed as unserious. Maybe it's because it's too long. This is the story. This is important. So the investigation finds that racism is not widespread, but there are certainly more than just issues with training and promotions, as that initial headline noted. So we know a white supremacist with known and documented issues working with the public, his fellow cops, and substance use and mental health issues was promoted and elevated, that there were cops within the BPD who have experienced racism from the department. What do we do with that? Let's do a quick hit of the solutions the investigators offered the city of Boise, which should be followed by departments across the country. Reporting here from the Idaho Statesman. The first thing, hire racially diverse officers. Wait until you hear this. Boise did not hire its first black officer until 1989. That's almost the 90s. Boise hired its first black officer the year Taylor Swift was born. I'm sure many of the people watching this video can actually remember 1989. Can you believe that? Another recommendation, don't lower hiring standards. Is this even something that needs to be suggested? Well, apparently it does. In August 2022, in response to struggles to recruit officers, the BPD lowered educational requirements to become a cop. 60 college credits to a GED or high school diploma. The lead investigator made it clear why this is a problem. Quote, the Metropolitan Police Department in Washington, D.C. lowered its standards in the 1980s because of staffing shortages, and that within a decade, the department began to encounter higher levels of officer misconduct and corruption. The investigator also said that training for the police should be rigorous And apparently it's not. Did you know that no one failed out of the police academy until recently? For over a decade. The average failure rate for departments across the country ranged from 10 to 25%. But for over a decade, the Boise Police were accepting every single person that came through the academy. This doesn't even happen at high schools. This doesn't happen in the military. I mean, come on. Then there were recommendations to not promote people who are obvious problems like Bryngelson was, invite outside scrutiny, not assume your way is the best or only way, review and approve outside speaking engagements, record audio and video on body camera footage, keep training records, and reform the ways the department reviews use of force incidents. All of these recommendations are important. Many seem like common sense. Many should have been implemented long ago. So does this sound like a complete and successful investigation to you? The Boise City Council members can't say the investigation was anything other than a complete and total success because they're already under pressure after spending $650,000 on an investigation that is unpopular with people who don't find white supremacists in law enforcement to be a big deal. This investigation makes clear why it is so many people distrust the police. True reforms never come to fruition, and bad actors are given opportunity after opportunity to advance through the ranks while being protected by their inner circle. What remains to be seen is whether the suggested changes recommended here by investigators will be implemented and whether that will lead to substantial change within the culture of the department. Former City Council member Lisa Sanchez said in December last year, quote, "We live in a city that was based on white supremacy. Our departments reflect our community. Indeed, this is bigger than one cop, one police department, one city. There are lessons here for cities across the country dealing with similar issues in their police departments. But accountability will never happen if we continue to ignore the reality that is racism in policing in this country or downplay it when an investigation reveals something that makes us uncomfortable. We know the steps we can take to reform, and reform is long, long overdue." I'd love to know what you think. You can call and leave me a voicemail, 657-464-7609, or you can send an email to idoubtit@dollemore.com. You can support me and my work on Patreon, patreon.com/idoubtitpodcast. I Doubt It Podcast is where you can find me and my co-host Jesse Dollemore having long-form discussions about current events and news, as well as interviews with prominent figures in society. Be sure to check it out. I would love to hear your thoughts on this one, so be sure to reach out. Take care, and I will see you next time.